meanings for different people. So for some, it can be very deep, and sometimes the conversations can be tricky, especially if that suffering is coming from childhood or adolescence. And so I am going to ask that during this conversation, we could maybe not look at the semantics of the definitions of the word, but how can we have an open conversation with each other? There's even, the Buddhist teachings of suffering, and that liberation comes from understanding and letting go of these causes, these creations, these, And so as we explore this together, I just want to ask for, again, the grace with the semantics. We don't have to debate definitions, but rather how can we have an open-hearted conversation to learn from experiences, and then maybe even have awareness on how we treat pain that may cause suffering in our life, and maybe some tools and tips on how to catch that awareness and make different decisions for ourselves. I'll give an example of the language that we use and maybe differences. So, for example, hungry versus starving. So there's a practice throughout North America and Latin America called a vision quest. It's within a community. In some areas, if somebody ever has a challenge or a problem, they're sent out into the desert in the North America, or they're sent out into the jungle in Latin America with no food and no water until they solve their challenge. And they have this practice here in Costa Rica, which I have participated in the jungle, no food, no water. And I went through what felt like starvation. My body was saying, prepare to die. And it was very painful. Now, sometimes in my everyday life, I am hungry and I'll say I'm starving. And then I have an awareness, I'm not actually starving, I'm hungry today. And I could easily go solve that by eating. If that prolonged, perhaps I would start starving. And so just with that in mind, that's the way I would kind of look like for us to tackle pain versus suffering. And so I want to share that in this lifetime, pain is inevitable. We are all going to feel pain. People that we care and love will die. People will get sick. People will hurt us. People will cheat us. Colleagues or community members or partners will deceive us. These things are painful events. And then if you just think about pets in their short life span, that is painful, that all of our pets will eventually also pass away. They're painful. Whether we heal from that pain will determine whether we are going to suffer from it. And so to me, choosing to heal from the pains in our life is choosing not to suffer. Saying, I'm going to go through pain, but I am going to choose not to suffer. So I'll give an example. In infidelity, for example, if somebody cheated on me, that is painful. And all the things that come up with that, low self-esteem, wondering what's wrong with me, will I ever love again? That is painful. If in 5 years, I can't trust somebody else, I have the desire to go through their phone, I don't feel comfortable, and then I cling to the relationship, that is suffering. If I don't love fully because of something that happened to me in my past, something painful just turned into my future suffering. And so it is my role as somebody who has chosen not to suffer to let that go. There's a quote by Rumi that says, your task is not to seek for love, but merely to seek and find all the barriers within yourself that you have built up against it. And so if I cannot love fully, what are the barriers in my way and how do I move through those? Whether it's, again, it could be jealousy, it could be trust issues. And each of these things, instead of looking for something outside of ourselves, of forcing somebody to be trustworthy, what do I need to do to develop the mental landscape where I can let that go? And that doesn't mean that it won't happen. It doesn't mean that all of a sudden nobody will let me down. that nobody will get sick or pass away, that nobody will be dishonest. It just means I have developed a framework that I will go through that pain to make sure that I do not suffer in the future. Okay, so what I would love to do now is open up some of the space for conversations. Before too many examples, if anyone does want to discuss some definitions of pain and suffering, just so that we can start the conversation together, and then we'll get into some examples if you guys are open to sharing. Does the word pain or suffering resonate with anyone that they want to share?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'll share. I just read recently that I think it's like a Zen Buddhist saying or something. It's like pain and suffering are like arrows. The first arrow that hits you is pain and it's unavoidable. The second arrow is the suffering, and you can choose to do what you want with it. Of course, that was probably said much more eloquently than what I just said. But the idea is, I mean, it's true, but I think like the more I read and study about it, it's difficult. It's difficult to not assign something that's painful feelings that kind of last and that in turn make you suffer. And so I do believe that it's possible, but I find that is extremely hard. And probably most people can't even acknowledge the fact that those two things aren't, pain and suffering don't have to exist together. So I guess this is just like a good space to talk about that and see, because I would love to be able to do a better job of that. But I guess recognizing that it's possible is kind of the first step.
Yeah, exactly. That's where we're starting on the call as well. And so
Yeah.
I love that you already see that distinguish. And I love the arrow analogy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyone else want to share just on what pain or suffering brings up for you? Yeah.
I have something to say about pain and suffering for sure. Personally, for me, there's a line of an old me and a new me. What pain represented in the past for me, you touched on a lot there, Sarah. I don't know where to pick at what you brought up first, but the loss of a pet, you talked about the loss of an animal unconditionally, and I saw Carolina's smile too. I went 30 years without a dog because that dog broke my heart so badly. I realize now that almost every relationship of loss is part of the new me, and I'll kind of explain the divide for me. But in the past, letting go, learning to surrender to what emotional pain from a loss would create would always feel like a void and absence, someone that you were never going to see or touch again. You mentioned the loss of a pet and a person. Of course, they're two different things, but that pain, that level of loss, and what's missing from your soul when you have a loss are two totally different things, but so in one of the same. The loss of a relationship, now I sort of define the loss of infidelity as what I would consider a soul plan. So we are two souls that we interact in this lifetime for whatever our soul agreement was to come here and have that relationship, is a learning experience that we design for our souls to define what it is that we need to fulfill our soul's purpose here in this reality. You know, I talk about the old me and the new me. Physically, things were very different, younger. Didn't have the same spiritual awakening that I do now, that I did when I was younger. But pain, to me today, if you come to me and we're having a session in what I do in my practice with my sound healing therapy, almost every sort of pain, whether it be emotional trauma, physical trauma, uh, just everyday chronic fatigue, is all related. And most people, it's a hard concept for most people to understand, is a detachment from your higher self, your spirit. Your soul is trying to contact you. And we bury things emotionally and we pretend as strong sentient beings, well, I could deal with certain things and pretend that I'm over it. But we bury that as trauma.
Mhm.
And that's an emotional type of pain that is different than a physical type of pain. Like I work on a lot of clients that have knee injuries or ankle problems, and they talk about, I have trouble walking or I can't run anymore. To me, that represents a fear of moving forward in life. Your spirit sends us synchronistic events in our everyday lives. Are we paying attention to those synchronicities? I could go deeply into it, but the pain manifests itself physically. And the more your spirit tries to contact you, and the further you ignore the synchronicities of your spirit putting out, well, maybe I should be doing this today. Maybe I should be going here or speaking to someone. All result in internal pain, which you store and becomes physical pain. So it's a detachment for me from spirit, because when you're connected to your higher self, you learn to surrender to the things that are causing either the traumatic emotional pain or the physical pain. Because then you become centered and with your soul's purpose. And me 10 years ago, physical pain would have been going to the doctor. What's going on with my hip? Or, maybe talking to a dear friend about a relationship problem that I had that was maybe not infidelity, but someone that wronged me. Talk therapy kind of thing would help. But I have a different perspective on what those things mean today. But people go through real things and they believe the definition of those things, whether it be the relationship or the physical pain, are caused by other things.
Mhm.
But they aren't. They aren't. It's part of how we create our reality and what our soul's purpose is. It's something that I stare at myself and say, you created it, all of it, every single part of it. And what does it mean to me? You have to always ask yourself, and then learn to surrender to it rather than wrestle with the ego about that it's not your fault or it's somebody else's fault and why me kind of thing. I hope that helps in some way. I know
Yeah.
it was kind of all over.
I didn't feel like it was all over. I felt like there were a lot of really useful tools in what you just shared. One of the tools that I use in life, especially if I don't understand a specific pain that's happening, like say a working relationship isn't working out and I don't know why. Over the last few years, I have the first time something didn't work out, I felt like I was in a washing machine. Just like, why is this happening? I've been working so hard. I'm doing the right things. And then a few months later, I'm like, oh my God, I'm so happy that happened. I'm so happy that didn't work out. And I could then, hindsight 2020, see why. And then the next thing happened. And now I'm in the washing machine, but I'm standing in the middle. I'm getting a little, and I still might know why, but I have a little inkling, but maybe it's for something. And then now when something happens, I'm not in the washing machine. I'm like, this is happening for a reason. What is the reason? What is the lesson? How do we clean and clear and move on? And so I've built this strength in not the why me, or it's a strength in knowing that it is in my highest good. And if it's not, was there something that I need to show up better? Was there a lesson that I need to learn? So even recently, we went to Portugal, and I came home with some lessons that I really wanted to implement in my life, and I come out strong. And then, we have full lives. One of the lessons starts deteriorating, and then I'm on my scooter, which I love, and I get hit from the back by another person on a motorcycle, like going 50 kilometers per hour. And my bike is destroyed. I have a couple bruises, and that's it. And so maybe if this was me 7 years ago, I wouldn't have thought twice about it. But because I'm in this community of human beings that are esoteric, and it's always, what was the lesson? Why? Why did that happen? In fact, I have a girlfriend that she says that so much, her boyfriend teases her. Like if something falls off her plate, he goes, why did that happen? But I did. I go, what was the purpose of me getting hit so hard? I am physically okay. My scooter's not okay, which is just a monetary fix. What is the lesson? And it was, you had made a decision to improve this area of your personality, and you started letting it wane. And karma works in a way that first it's like, hey, Sarah, and then it gets louder, and then you get hit by a motorcycle. And I'm like, learn the lesson. And to me, that is a tool of pain not becoming suffering, is learn the lesson. What do I need to learn from this? Where do I need to grow from this? And I do believe the universe gives you the same lesson over and over until you learn it. And so I tell the universe, I'm learning lessons. I don't need to go through it again. Learn the lessons. Yeah. Okay. Ian, Lisa, or Lisa Sutton, anything to share just on what comes up for you on pain and suffering?
So I usually have a lot to say, but yeah, pain and suffering stumped me a little bit. I recognize my vacillation between oversharing pain and maybe bringing more suffering, and then stuffing it and thinking like no one understands it or no one gets the level of grief, or whatever that it is that I'm going through. And so I recognize both of those things can be like I don't want to say it in a judgment way, but like a lower self-thought or a lower way of handling it. So I guess I'm just really working on better ways to express what I need to express and ask for help. So I think I take all the pain to like an island.
Mm.
And just I think I want to, like, I would have said it before, like I want to just shelter everybody from that, but really I want to cocoon and be away from other people's judgment or one-upmanship or whatever it is that they're bringing that I don't feel is healing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as humans, we generally in these areas learn by trial. We share something, and then based on the reflection of it, oh, did I share too much? And we all go through that. Did I not share enough? Am I sharing with the right human being? And then trying to learn the discernment between processing that's productive and ruminating. And so I remember in one of my ceremonies, I felt a very distinct, you are rewiring your brain right now. So you better put some really beautiful patterns in there. And so I started just being my best cheerleader and giving myself all this love. And I thought of the virtues that I want to be as a human being. And I started saying, I want to be. And then she taught me, you already are. So then I am. And one of the programmings that I've worked on giving myself that night, and I still work on to this day, is our brains will repeat the same thing over and over. And so let's say we had for lack of a better word, a confrontation this morning. I will repeat that confrontation in my mind. And the first time, it's helpful. I might be able to open up a little bit more compassion for the other side. Then I repeat it again. And maybe in that second time, I actually heard something that they said and it landed this time. So maybe while they said it, maybe I was angry, and so I didn't intellectually accept it. But now that I'm reliving that, I'm like, you know what? I can see their side. I might even go, oh, I think I was wrong. I think I need to call them back and say, I'm sorry. So there's an amount of repeating that is beneficial and productive. I can go through next time this happens, I'll do this. I just learned a lesson. After about 10 times, it might not be productive anymore. Now it's teetering on rumination. Rumination is something that they talk about that partners with depression. A lack of gratitude and rumination is really something that can cause a whole lot of emotional depression. And so to find where are we having productive repeats and where are we ruminating that we might be spiraling down. And by the way, we also do that. We also all do that. We also all have spiraled down in rumination. And so it's a practice. It's a practice on, and sometimes we'll do it and then have that awareness, catch ourselves. Yeah. So I hear you, Lisa. And what do you think that you will do in the future to maybe not be so much on an island, but still, as you said, you want to be aware of other people sharing too much? Where have you landed so far?
So I have a really amazing new meditative practice that I've been doing for the last 7 months. That's just, I really can't say enough about how different it is than any other meditation. So that has helped me so much more to be with myself, to really I don't know how else to really say it, to really be with my authentic self and not be in this space of the self that I present. You know what I'm saying? So I feel like it's gonna just take some time to get more clarity on what I can actively do that will change it. But when you were talking, I did feel like, and thank you for presencing that, but I feel like, I don't know exactly how I want to say this. The emotional level can sometimes, I recognize it later, it can overtake the mental level, right? So I will feel the, let's just say that a lot for me, it's right now is the political current that's happening in the area that I live in. It's like I am surrounded by people who are hate-filled, ignorant people. And it's very hard to be yourself and not be guarded when you're literally surrounded by, I had a road rage incident happen to me on the way home on Thursday night, and the guy got out of the car and approached my car screaming at me, calling me every name in the book. And I just had my doors locked and my windows, up and, on the police with 911, with 911, and just saying nothing, doing nothing. But it, of course I did what you did, with that reflection of why did that just happen? That is so crazy. There's definitely a reason why, and that person did mirror, very ironically, somebody from my past. And some of the pain from that relationship that's not resolved.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, so I'm just trying really hard to survive right now. I don't know how else to say it. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you, Lisa. I feel you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for sharing on the meditation. One of the main purposes of meditation is to know thyself, as we hear, know thyself. And the more we know ourselves and also know who we are and who we are not, we can then even say, and who do I want to be? And then start taking those steps. Who do I want to be? Yeah.
I'll jump in and say this concept of pain versus suffering is fairly new to me. So thank you for this topic today. And hello, everybody.
Hello.
I'm fairly new on my path. I was in Costa Rica just 3 months ago. So probably that's why it hasn't come up. But this conversation is making me think of a chapter I just read in Untethered Soul, where the author talks about all events in life passing through your heart. And most of them just pass through. When you're walking down the street, you see buildings and people and cars and things, but it just passes through. But painful things get stuck, don't pass through, and then you carry them in your heart. So Sarah, I was comparing this to what you were saying about, I'm paraphrasing you, learn the lesson when the pain happens, and then suffering can be eliminated or minimized moving forward. So I'm sort of comparing these concepts right now.
Yeah. That reminds me, so we're on retreat right now. Our guests are having their first ceremony tonight. We had our opening yesterday, and somebody was sharing that each time they shook someone's hand, they felt like they were giving away their energy. They were giving away their power. And kind of a shift of that you just reminded me of these events come through us and then many times just right back out, and sometimes they don't. And to have like a reframe or maybe even a reprogram of our energy. And so as an example, unconditional love to me is unlimited. I have an unlimited amount of unconditional love. It can flow out of me like a fire hydrant, but my energy has limits and it has boundaries. And so I can look at somebody and say, I unconditionally love you, but my energy has conditions and you're not meeting them. Therefore, I cannot give you any more energy. Same with these events in our life. How do we transmute them? Most of them will just naturally transmute, and then some stop and get stuck. It's my practice of how do I transmute that energy? And sometimes in healing aspects, Anthony, I might pass this back over to you. Sometimes we take on people's pain, and how do we make sure that doesn't get stuck also? Many of the medicine men and women that we work with, they have a personal practice of how to release other people's energies, other people's pain. And a lot of the pain that is put on us, inflicted to us, happens to us, is in our karma or our dharma. It came from people who are also in pain. And so where can we also have a compassion practice of, okay, somebody just hurt me. Can I build enough compassion for them to say, they hurt me because somebody hurt them? And that doesn't mean I don't take action or do what's right or stand up for myself or stand up for others. But instead of doing it with anger, I'm now doing it from compassion. And it might be the same thing. Like even people that do the worst things in the world, I still think they should go to jail. I still think that there may be a punishment for it, but I can still have compassion for that human. And so it doesn't mean a spiritual bypass of, I can have compassion for people that did a terrible thing. And so now I'm not going to take action. It's both. It's action with compassion. And that's also how I keep my heart strong. And so that I can show up the next day with compassion and the next day and not get tired. Anthony, I would like to pass it over to you because I know that you also work in a healing capacity. And so do you have a practice to make sure that you transmute the pains that you see, especially the emotional pains that you see?
I'm glad you dragged me in here because I deal with it a lot. I'm getting a lot better at it. Ian, you said something more profound than, I don't know if you even realized, how everything goes through the heart. Okay, you have so many people don't understand that the heart controls everything, the body. Most people think the brain controls the body, but the electromagnetic pulse of your heart creates an aura. You could stand 5 feet from someone and feel this guy's giving me the bad vibes, or I have to speak with this person. That triggers an emotional response, that triggers an action to the brain, and the body carries it out like a machine. So it is part of what you feel. So when you're doing energy work, the way I do, it's all about heart and how you unconditionally love what it is you're trying to do, which is move stagnant energy, heal trauma, take the energy that is at a high frequency of emotional pain and give it a frequency in a lower vibrational state to calm the trauma. But the practice, we talk about meditation and what that means. Meditation is important for everything. I don't leave the house without having a moment to protect my energy. Because, Lisa, like you were saying, you wanted to disappear and go on an island to get away from everyone because we just feel everyone else's chaos when you're a high vibrational sentient soul. You feel it. But the practice is really meditation. For me, asking my guides a lot for protection. Most people don't realize what obsidian and black tourmaline and black onyx do is they absorb, or I should say, refract PMF, EMF, electromagnetic static. That's the property stone by science. So when you wear a piece of obsidian as a bracelet or keep a rock in your pocket, it actually helps absorb when somebody else's energy and your vibration aren't at a compatible match at that point. Sarah, you said something about loving unconditionally, but you have a threshold for your energy. And that's self-love for how you treat yourself. And what's better than like retreating in silence, especially in nature, Lisa, or even in meditation for a few minutes to recenter yourself and ask spirit guides. Say that you are an impervious bubble to everyone else's chaos and negative energy. And it's a practice, but if you stay on that, you're like in your own bumper car around people sometimes when you feel all the chaos around you. But you have to believe your definition. I'm in a good state. I'm protected. You can't take my energy.
Mm-hmm.
And when you come at it with that approach, that confidence and that practice, it's like wearing bubble wrap for everything that you do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think there's like the protection strategies and then the strengthening strategies to protect ourselves and protect and strengthen. And so that when we are in these social chaotic dilemmas, how can I make sure that I'm not going to absorb energy and now I can't sleep at night? Now I can't eat. And then also strengthening so that we can come and help find justice where needed. And so our practices of protection and strength.
A lot of times we find ourselves absorbing everybody else's emotional stress rather than being an observer of it. which is difficult for most people to do because we feel it. But how do we stay within that energy and be an observer is to be aware of how it makes you feel. And if you can't stay too close to the heat, so to speak, you get out of the kitchen. And, there are many social events. I'm like, I can't be here. And I'll fade away, won't be rude. I'll say goodbye to certain people and then I'll bow out gracefully if it's overwhelming. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Mhm.
It's your reaction and how you deal with protecting yourself, and should never be ashamed of your own self-love.
It's the most important thing we can do. Love ourselves.
I agree.
Carolina, Clara, anything you guys are wanting to share?
I can share. I was thinking about this, and for me, as I was growing up as a kid, I think so there was a lot of events around me, a lot of things that inflicted different types of pain. And there was a period, especially I think when I was in my teenage years and I had lots of things happening and shifts happening. I think I ignored what was happening, or I tried to, everything's fine. Everybody around me, all my friends are like, do you want to talk about this? And I'm like, I don't want to talk about it. I'm outside. Now I can just not think about it. But I think, and now I really believe that, is the more I ran away from it, the more it was creating suffering in my life without me even being aware. Until the moment where something happens, like I failed the math exam and I completely broke. And I was like, even then, I knew that my breaking down could have not been for a stupid math exam, but I was not there yet. I was not prepared to deal with the suffering or looking at the suffering. And even in a physical term, I remember when I was studying to be a ballet dancer, I realized the more I'm in pain, right? I have to stretch and I have to do things and that go against the body and it's painful. The more I ran away from it, the more it was painful. And I started doing this experiment of, if I go with my brain to the place of pain, I cannot explain why, but the pain went down. It was unbelievable. But for many, many years, I couldn't transfer that physical knowledge, that physical awareness of, if I go to the pain and I breathe, it actually goes down and to a place that I can cope with it. It's still painful, but I could cope with it, but I couldn't transfer that to my emotional life, right? And it's been more recently, as I think that's also part of maturing and growing older, you kind of learn how to navigate this. But I just feel if I go with it and I can see it and don't run away from it, even if I'm in pain, it's not that suffering in anymore that it takes control over my life, right? And then I started to have less of those emotional reactions that are bursts that people don't understand, like the emotional roller coaster. It started to just be much more balanced and much more, I was more in control. I was just more at peace. And for me, I think it's the more I run away from what I have to accept, the more I'll be in suffering, right? Because the pain will come eventually, right? I cannot control that, but I think the difference for me is that the suffering, I can somehow work with it and I can reduce it, and it shouldn't stop me from wanting another pet or from wanting to go to another relationship, right? I mean, the brain learns, it's a useful learning, I guess, right? This got me pain, I need to learn not to do next. But I guess for me, there is a threshold where it stops being useful to become harmful. So for me, it's really that, I think it all goes to that, right? The breathing and acceptance, and that helps so much. But it is hard to do.
Yes, it's a practice. All
Yeah.
of this is a practice. Yeah. And I love that. Face it, breathe with it. I've noticed in past events in my life, if I were to think of them, they may cause like a knot in my throat or a knot in my stomach. And that's how I would know I'm not healed from this yet. If I retell the story in my head, I have even a physical response to it. I have a practice. Sometimes we do it on retreat. No, I'm not saying it right. The Hawaiian prayer. And through this compassion exercise, now when I think of these certain past events, it's just an event. I no longer get that knot in my throat. I no longer have a knot in my stomach. And sometimes I demonstrate this practice, this compassion exercise, and I'll do somebody that I've already healed from, and I don't have the emotional response, even though I'm trying to share, this is what it would look like. I'm like, I am healed from that. I have worked through that, and I no longer have this emotional response. Now it is an event in my life that I had to grow from, and so I can even move into gratitude for it because it made me who I am and made me who I'm becoming. So to me, that's a physical sign of whether I've healed from something. Yeah. Claire, did you want to share anything?
Yeah, sure. I was just thinking about a tool that I learned like a few years ago through positive psychology, and that has really helped me like manage certain situations or deal with certain situations. And it's called the 3 Ps: pause, perspective, and plan, right? And the first thing it comes to all like pausing, right? As Carolina was saying, as we were saying, just pausing, taking a breath, right? And just slowing down. And that can take like a day if something, just happened, or it might take, I don't know, months or years, just like pausing from that, right? And then gaining some perspective or seeing what can come out of this, or thinking about, why did that person reacted that way? Why did I react that way? Why this happened? What we were just asking before, and then planning, right? Like, okay, if this happens in the future, if I'm now thinking about getting a new pet, if I'm, thinking of going through a certain situation again, how would I react, right? What can I do differently? I know it might sound like extra and super practical, and sometimes it's hard to implement, but it actually helps me when I'm dealing with certain types of pain.
I love it. I have a beautiful friend who frequently talks about attachment and detachment. And I always love to try to force her to talk about practical situations, because sometimes these ideas in theory just sound so great, and then I try to force her into practicality. And so since we've mentioned the pet, so she would say, for example, you can love the pet without being attached to the pet. You need to have detached love. And I think theoretically, yes, and okay, maybe even practically, yes. But now let's say I had a lot of pain when that pet died, and I'm afraid to have another pet because I don't want to go through that pain again. I could either practice detached love or just say, you know what, I will probably attach to this pet again. But I'm going to do that, and I am willing to go through the pain again because the amount of love I received while the dog was alive was worth it. It was worth it. And so I'm going to do it again. And same in relationships. If people break our heart or people pass away, the willingness to say, I'll go through that again. And I will probably have attached love. I have all the loves. I have unconditional love and attached love and detached and friend love and all of the things. And they're all great. Everything outside of the unconditional love comes with things that can cause us pain and suffering and to choose, but it's worth it. So I'm going to do it again.
Something I struggle with, and which this conversation is reminding me of, is it's in the moment. How do you deal with stress in the moment, especially at work? I don't have a particularly high stress job, but I'm surrounded by huge personalities. So it's hard for me to be in the moment. So I've got a little Post-it right beside my camera. I think I took it from a Sarah Blondin meditation. Be, receive, give thanks. So to me, that means be is, okay, check that I'm alive. Can I feel my heartbeat? Can I feel my skin? Can I feel my nose? It's something that brings me into the moment. And then receive is, to me, surrender. Just surrender to the moment and accept the moment as if I chose it. And then give thanks, like you were saying, Sarah. Give thanks for, hey, that really sucked. I'm really glad it happened. So there's that 3 little thing. I have it on my laptop. I have it on my work computer as well. It's just because that most of my stress seems to happen at work, and most of my detachment from my centered self happens with work. So that's something that works for me.
I love that. And with the practice, the time frame between where we are now and where we want to be gets shorter. And so let's say, for example, I'm working on patience. I lose my patience, and maybe I was reactive. And then I go through my practice in my work, the be, receive, give thanks. Maybe I can't get there for 2 hours. And the next time, maybe I get there in an hour and a half. And next time, maybe 30 minutes. And then in the future, now I'm there as it's happening. And that practice gets shorter and shorter. And sometimes things are years. And years can be an exaggeration, but there's things that maybe could happen today in my relationship that if they happened 5 years ago, I'd be mad for 3 days. And now I'm mad for, 5 minutes. Or I can even have the presence of, I have practiced how to communicate during this type of thing. And so I'm going to practice now. I think people think about forgiveness as something of the past. We're forgiving people of a past thing. Also with the forgiveness practice, somebody can be a certain way and we are forgiving them automatically. Again, it doesn't mean we don't take action. It doesn't mean we don't do the right thing or have the strong conversation, but whatever may cause something where I might need to forgive them later, I'm just going to do it right now. I'm going to forgive you for everything you're doing right now. Doesn't mean I don't take action, but emotionally, I'm not going to have a negative impact based on what's happening right now. And that's all we do every day is practice. We just practice. And then that practice gets stronger. And then we are that practice. And then some days we fall off. Then we forgive ourselves. And we practice again. Yeah. Juanita, I see you just joined. We have been talking about pain and suffering. If there's anything you want to unmute and share, you are welcome. We have just a little under 10 more minutes left. So I want to just go through, I always think it's nice to have some practical tools before we jump off. And I'm so appreciative that all of the tools came from this conversation. And so I really loved what Anthony said about our soul plan. It was meant to be this acknowledgement that whatever is happening, especially if I learn from it, is what was meant to be. That is a tool that I use in my life, is acceptance. Acceptance that this is here for me, not against me. Even if it feels against me at the moment, it's not. It's to make me a stronger person, to make me a more loving person, a more compassionate person. The not bearing it, to face it. The bearing it is what will burying it. Bearing it is what will later turn pain into suffering. And so how do we work with it as best we can today? And if not today, tomorrow. And if not tomorrow, within a relative period of time of which we can look at things and learn from it. The connect to our higher self. Thank you again, also Anthony, for sharing that one. Connect to our higher self and to surrender to it. In the last few months, I have had a surrender practice. I mean, for years, a surrender practice, but where I've really been tested by the universe, where something strong will happen and I will emotionally get wrapped up in it. And then sometimes I'll even go, okay, you are in it. What is the worst case scenario? And I know sometimes people don't like to do worst case scenarios. Every once in a while I do as a part of my surrender practice, because when I go and list out what's the worst case scenario, I realize I can live through that. And then all of a sudden I surrender to it. And this is something that has been magic in the last few times I've done this. Almost immediately it goes away. I'll give a practical example. In Costa Rica, it is not easy, but when you have land for a long period of time, every once in a while, something that happens here is somebody cheats the system and can put their name on your land. So that happened to me, and I got an eviction notice. Could you imagine? You have a piece of land, you built a home, you have other people live on your property with chickens and a dog, and you get an eviction notice. And so obviously there's a criminal, and I'm being told you got to leave in 10 days. And so that is very emotional. And, start taking action and not sleep and yell and do this and do all of the things. And then the next day, has anything moved? Has anything shifted? Have we talked to the right people? And then I did what is the worst case scenario? Okay, the worst case scenario, you get evicted. And what's worse than that? You never get it back. The criminals win. You never get your land back. Okay, then what happens? You're gonna have to go get another piece of land. Okay, and then what happens? Well, I'll build a new home. What kind of home do you want? I love my home now, but you can't raise children in it. I'll build a home that I can raise kids in. Okay, so the worst case scenario is you get a new piece of land with a home that you can raise kids in. I can live with that. Have you done everything actionable that you could do to make sure you don't lose your land? Yes. Okay, then why are you not going to have a good night's sleep? Why are you going to bring this energy into your breakfast, lunch, and dinner with your partners and your friends? You've taken all the actions you could, and you are willing to surrender to this. And guess what happens? 2 hours later, the lawyers call and say they reached the judge. The eviction has been stopped. Like, thank you, universe. Now, I still have to take some steps to make sure that in long term, this doesn't happen. I'm not getting evicted. But I've had multiple instances of take action and then surrender. And then all of a sudden the universe says, good job, you surrendered. Now I'm going to get you back in universal flow. Okay, thank you, universe. So an aspect of surrender. And surrender doesn't mean sleep in. It just means surrender. Yeah.
I'm going to paraphrase what Clara said about, I have a different term for it, but it is the same. I call it the sacred pause. Learning not to react the second something happens is what we all do too often with everything that comes at us. Of course, from the sublime to the ridiculous, you were going to lose your property. Or someone said something to me that was offended, and let me think about why that was offensive to me. In two different things, but when you take a minute and you pause and you think about what you just said, Sarah, what's the worst thing that's going to happen? Or what does this mean to me, Clara? Why am I reacting a specific way? If you take just a few minutes, sometimes it takes a little longer. The result will always be different than that first immediate reaction. You're ready to jump down somebody's throat and start yelling and screaming. Figure out what it means to you, why you're reacting that way first, and then try and keep your head on your shoulders and go through the legal things or what it meant that someone said something to offend you. The sacred pause is an integral part of how we should, interact with everything. Think first, feel, and then react.
Yeah. I love it. I think that's a really good place to close out our conversation. Thank you, guys. I'm going to pass this back over to Carolina. I took notes during our call because I'm so blessed to have received your tools that I'm going to implement in my life as well. So thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Before we all leave, I would just like to say that the next alumni call that we're going to have is the 30th of August, so the last Saturday of the month at the same time. And then we have, this is going to be, I'm just going to let you guys know what we have in terms of retreats coming up. So we have our women's retreat. I don't know if you know anyone who would love to join. It's on the 7th of December. I'm going to put in the chat right now the notes. And then we are also offering Bufo now in Costa Rica. I don't know if you guys knew, but that's a new product that we are offering. And that's it for today in terms of news. Thank you so much. I learned a lot today. Like always, every time we do these calls, it's just so inspiring. And I feel blessed that you join us for these calls and share your wisdom with us.
Thank you for sharing, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.